Third year, beginning of rainy season. Chimerica continues to fight the United States-funded terrorists, ravaging our countryside and massacring our civilians. Plans have been set in motion to have ourselves a genuine democratic election. With the economy supposedly collapsing all around him, will Presidente Olmec somehow manage to keep the ship afloat? Or is everything bound to collapse? Before we get started in earnest with this rainy season, I want to check out some reports here. So let's go do that, as I adjust my headset around my neck. Okay, let's read some news campaigns first. Stupendous success of the vaccination campaign. In Trinidad, children race to be the first to protect themselves against the dreaded measles, soon to be relegated to history books as a scourge of the past. On the heels of the success of the vaccination campaign, the Commissioner of Health announced the next great goal of the healthcare program. Children with diarrhea still die from loss of water. We must set up oral rehydration units in our healthcare centers and train mothers how to use rehydration salts. That the Constitution would be such a one-sided document has been made clear by the resignation of the Popular Stability members of the Council just prior to its release. You mean the two Popular Stability folks who led coups? Yeah. The National Assembly has overwhelmingly adopted the new Constitution. Everywhere we hear praise for the historic document. Delirious crowd greets Calderon as our beloved Commandante stepped from the plane. A roar like an erupting volcano surged from the crowd. Commandant Calderon shows no sign of having moderated his views. In his first speech since being named candidate of the National Liberation Party, he denounced the betrayal of the revolution, calling on voters to strike a resounding blow against the brutal aggressors. Oh, that Calderon. Crowd's delirious seventh enthusiasm. What? I can't read that. Rushed to the streets, calling with or voiced the name Rosario! Rosario! Ha 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 ha! Not Rosario! As the newly announced Popular Stability candidate emerged from the limousine, his noble head silhouetted in the street light, classically minded observers could not help but be reminded of Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, returning to save Rome. In what many took to be deliberate defiance of the president, the Popular Stability Party chose as its candidate Francisco Rosario Rosales, scion of the Rosario family. Indeed! You know that fucker who tried to lead a coup against me? Yeah, that asshat. Good times. I think this is 10. We'll go with that. Now, reports. Military expenses. Yeah. Social spending. Ooh, that's actually gone down. But expenditures for infrastructure has increased. Infant mortality continuing to decrease. Very, very good. Land distribution, land owned by the wealthiest 5%, continuing to decrease. Very, very good. Food. Can't fix everything. Export crops. Coffee production continued to increase. Cotton is going... No, the coffee price is going up. Hard currency earnings. So we're actually selling cotton at a loss now. Keep making more cotton! Fucking... We don't know how to do anything else! Ooh. Ooh, there we go. Amount owed to other governments, international banks. Yeah, it's gone up and... Ooh. No, that first season there, not having any support at all. Having an economic embargo instituted on us. amount owed to other governments and international banks, but at least we don't have the loans from international banks and institutions. I guess that's cool. That bilateral aid from USSR and Cuba, though, has skyrocketed. Whew. We're gonna have to. We gotta stop the military. It's just too much. We have to stop. Hey, it's just too much. It's too much. I lost my train of thought. It's alright. You care about civil liberties? Let's have a chat about civil liberties, then. I thoroughly object, your minister says adamantly, to the revolutionary tribunals established under this emergency to try subversives. We already have a perfectly adequate criminal court system. Furthermore, there is not evidence to charge someone with a crime. We must presume that no crime has been committed. I agree. I concur with this. And I bet you concur. And you concur. And you are like, shit. Our emergency is designed to prevent our enemies from trying to overthrow our government. Faced with such serious threats, we cannot always wait for hard evidence to accumulate when we know very well what the traitors are up to. Investigate allegations of... That's not good enough. In the upcoming elections, I will be the National Liberation Party candidate. I will therefore be unable to carry on as minister, and hereby resign. I'm not surprised. Well, shit. I'm gonna have to pull in somebody else, and I'm thinking it's gonna have to be someone else from the National Liberation Party. There's only one person left. Popular stability. Well, Manuel, I get it, man. I get it. And if you win, I actually wouldn't have a problem with that. I would be okay with that. Even if you wanted completely, if you wanted to turn this country into another dictatorship. It's okay, man. It's okay. At this point, I think Presidente Olmec is just tired. Ever so tired. But we're going to have to appoint someone else. I guess we don't have to. I could just roll without a defense minister. I don't know how I feel about that. Nationwide campaign, reducing dependency on larger nations. I don't know about that. We kind of need some help. Gloria. Yeah, I guess I'll appoint you as my defense minister. Doesn't seem right somehow, but there you go. That's where we are right now. It's where we are. So how do you feel? Elections. Though the recent political violence is regrettable, the call for punishment of the guilty would still be too dangerous. Your Christian Democrat supporters urge you to instead focus your platform on issues of national security and economic growth. Take all available means to bring your message to the people, including campaign visits to major cities and acceptance of aid generally offered by the North. Huh? To further your election campaign, accept financial aid from the U.S. government. Can we do that? Is that legal? Of course, you know, these guys who are my ministers now, you know they're fucking campaigning for me to win, so... They're going to do everything in my power to ensure that I stay in office, I guess. I thought I'd done a decent job of winning the support of the people. I kind of overturned 2 coups. But I mean, Captain Badass is gonna be running, so he's got a lot of weight, man. He's got a lot of weight. How do you feel? Our critics cried ceaselessly for elections, your minister says with some amusement. Now that elections are planned, they denounce them. They know that the true revolutionaries will win. There's no need to resort to tactics which can only tarnish the image of a glorious demonstration of popular will. If we can do this, sure. Presidente Olmec's just so tired. If we can try, we'll try. Below you will find an excerpt from an interview with one of the Reacto leaders. Feel like you might be missing something? Tell it to the military censors. Those who occasionally buy the brand of fish wrapping paper called Chimerica Aura and accidentally read the lies printed therein will not be surprised by the latest development. On good authority, we have learned that the supposedly Chimerican institution is actually a puppet of U.S. propagandists. It has received hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled through a CIA front called the National Endowment for Democracy. European governments, displeased with the recent declaration of emergency powers, have begun reassessing their aid commitments to Chimerica. In his news conference, the president praised what he called the freedom fighters struggling to liberate the Chimerican people trapped in a communist reign of terror. With its newspaper censorship and revolutionary tribunals, Chimerica begins more and more to resemble the East Bloc nations so admired by some of the junta leadership. Yeah, I had to declare the state of emergency. I didn't have a choice in that situation. European diplomats generally agree that if the electorate were to be freely allowed to choose, the National Liberation Party would win handily. Diplomatic observers give the Christian Reform Party the best chance of forging a truly representative coalition government, that is, if they are allowed to win, which many here doubt given the totalitarian tendencies of some of their opponents. Select an issue. Civil liberties. Let's eliminate the censorship provisions of the state of... I didn't know everything that the fucking state of emergency instituted, and I'm kind of annoyed that it was forced upon me. Presidente, mobs and National Liberation supporters continue to harass leaders of other parties. Yesterday they surrounded a building housing a Christian Reform meeting, throwing stones and jeering. At least stood by doing nothing. Unless this sort of harassment ceases, the entire electoral process will be in doubt. Now I'm pissed. Fucking bastards. I wonder how I stopped that. Oh, man. I don't know how I don't actually know how I stopped that. Will these elections truly be a victory for democracy or merely a smokescreen for a Marxist takeover? It is still hard to say. Rumors persist that the CIA has given millions of dollars to the Christian Reform Party campaign. This is disgraceful. Small as Chimerica may be, it is a sovereign nation. By what right does the Colossus of the North presume to buy and sell our leaders? Such interference in our internal affairs is intolerable. It is becoming increasingly apparent that the National Liberation Party, largely in control of the army, is in a position to dominate the electoral proceedings. That it is. That it is. I kind of made the army strong. There's no real counterbalance to it. How can we fix this? The escalation of this devastating war has a dismal effect on our economy, but faced with such a powerful adversary, the course of intransigence and bellicosity is doomed to failure. I agree. Let's start trying to fix this shit. Praiseworthy decisions to cut back on the military buildup. Doubts persist, however, about the government's real intentions. Northwest of Yulatega, Reactos attacked a truckload of coffee pickers. 22 compañeros died and 6 were wounded. 3 mercenaries were still inside a truck when the mercenaries set on fire. How can the government think of cutting back on military spending in these circumstances? They must be crazy as goats. Because we don't have money, and we're not allowed to accept aid from the Colossus of the North, you fucking assholes. I guess the passion and the fire has gone out of our good friend here. It has, it has. Let's keep talking about civil liberties. A number of cases have been reported of Army mistreatment of suspected insurgents. We didn't. We've replaced one death squad with another. Yes. In this election charade, the Presidente is like a blindfolded child wildly swinging a piñata. When the elections finally hit, the brightly colored horse will turn out to be stuffed with bright red National Liberation bonbons. No one will be surprised with the blindfolded Olmec. The meddling North Americans still think they can buy up our revolution. They offer thousands of their pieces of silver to candidate Judases. Polling is not an exact science anywhere. Chimerica is less a science than a superstition. Nevertheless, the continued popular the insurrectionary hero, Calderon's just a one-term presidency for Olmec. That's okay. He was a part of the cabinet. He went to take charge. Fine. It'll be a complete democratic process. I'll fucking go home. I'm fucking done. I am done being El Presidente. Olmec is tired of this bullshit. The escalation of the devastating war. Alright, we already selected this one, I guess. Let's select it again, then. Let's keep going. International relations. In response to terrorist provocations, U.S. jet fighters recently made a punitive raid on the Middle Eastern nation of Diwania. The UN Diwania has proposed resolution condemning the attack. This kind of violent reaction cannot be condoned. It is too reminiscent of Chimerica's own history, unilateral actions from superpowers. Wow, Ignacio is actually hoping for a UN resolution condemning the U.S. attack. And how do you feel? Yep, we all agree. Let's do that then. Preparations for the elections are nearly complete. A number of National Assembly candidates have withdrawn, including some from your own party. It is too late, however, to remove their names from the ballot. May I take this opportunity to commend your forbearance and equanimity. Saboteurs attack the docks of the port city of Fonseca, sinking or damaging ships from a dozen nations. Crowds form in front of the U.S. Embassy and march to the National Square, protesting this affront to the national honor. After giving a patriotic speech to the crowd, Chief of Staff Correa turns to you. Though the United States Embassy has issued a standard denial, Commandant Correa says scornfully, the attacks on the ships in Fonseca Harbor are clearly the work of CIA saboteurs. Perhaps this clear violation of international law, when brought to the attention of the world, will finally convince the gringos to cease their pointless campaign of destruction. Oh. I guess this is what I'm gonna do. Maybe I should have put someone from the Christian... I should have changed my ministers somehow, or... I mean... Yeah, I feel this way too, but I don't even have the option to do anything else. Let's try it. Let's try it. What else can we chat about? Corruption. What else can we chat about with corruption? Revise the tax code to make the rich pay their full share? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know they weren't paying their full share. Shit! If I can do that, then. The electoral procedures established by our Constitution have been duly carried out. Manuel Calderon Iglesias has been selected to succeed you. All Chimericans thank you for your patriotic and conscientious service at a critical time in our nation's history. Okay. Alright. In the end, all segments of Chimerican society united to overthrow Farsante. 40 years of notorious corruption and repression eventually isolated him internationally as well. When the United States finally cut off all aid to the country, it was clear that the days of the dictatorship were numbered. The period that followed was one of instability and confusion. For a period of less than 3 years, the government was led by Kirk Olmec Fogg. At the head of a broad-based junta representing each of the 3 major political alignments, the support of the vast majority of the Chimerican populace, the new president announced new priorities for the revolutionary government. Free and open distribution. So much for that promise. Permission to reproduce this excerpt from the Encyclopedia Pax Americana U.S. Tricentennial Edition is gratefully acknowledged. Development that puts first priority on the growth of the economy, improvement of the country's infrastructure, roads, utilities, and port facilities. The new government therefore seemed determined to limit government to a traditional managerial role, opting not to risk economic dislocation in pursuit of social justice. Over time, however, the new leader moderated these views and began the difficult task of steering a middle course through the turbulent waters of Chimerican political life. One of the first decisions the new government faced was what to do with the vast estates amassed by the dictator and his associates. They were quickly divided up and sold off. The redistribution policy was designed to primarily benefit the large number of owners of small-sized farms, many of whom found their holdings significantly increased. A hastily executed land reform program in the cotton-producing regions proved ineffective in raising the living standard of the poor. Landless workers were given poor, rocky soil on the sides of mountains, or put in debt to their former employers. Many of the new farmers barely managed to eke out a subsistence. Ongoing tensions had a negative effect on the production of export crops as well. The new president fought a successful battle to bring the remnants of the Farsante Guard to justice. Death squad attacks in the city ceased. The Reconciliation Army represented a bold and unprecedented experiment in Latin American affairs. 2 determined forces that had been shooting at each other almost until the moment Farsante left were asked to merge into one and accept the leadership of officers drawn from both sides. Colonel Horatio Erlich Fernandez and Subcommandant Gabriel Correa Mercado shared the office of Chief of Staff. To the surprise of no one, the situation did not last. Fighting broke out repeatedly between the 2 camps, culminating in Erlich's forced departure into exile in Panama. Olmec, resisting advice to take more radical steps, sought to encourage smaller export producers by creating a national marketing board to offer marketing services on equal terms with those offered their larger neighbors by transnational corporations. The lending priorities of the national bank remained what they had always been, focused exclusively on the large producers of export crops. Though this policy helped retain the confidence of the wealthy elite, the peasants that produced the nation's food were unable to grow enough food to feed a growing population. Regrettable. When mass demonstrations filled the streets in response to food shortage, the government sent in the army to break up the protests. Malnutrition was soon as bad, or worse, than it had been under the Farsantes. An ambitious program designed to meet the healthcare needs of the poor with rural healthcare clinics achieved a significant drop in the infant mortality rate. The rate began to climb again, however, when insurgent violence became directed against the clinics. A highly promoted adult literacy campaign proved a popular success. New schools were built throughout the economy. While funds lasted, a far greater percentage of students received basic instruction than at any previous time in Chimerican history. Olmec made considerable investment in the country's future development through the importation of up-to-date electrical and communication systems. Most of this was earmarked for export-producing regions, already the best served in the country. Vast rural areas remained entirely without electricity, running water, or paved roads. Despite a concerted effort to reduce official corruption, scandals continued to periodically erupt. In another major break with the Farsante era, union organization was encouraged, the right to strike guaranteed, and a minimum wage enforced. For a time, the IMF gave Chimerica considerable latitude in the repayment of development loans. Eventually, however, began to insist on various measures of austerity. Though the government adopted many of these measures under pressure from the USA, the IMF continued to refuse further assistance. The decision to accept both military and economic aid from Cuba and the Soviet Union, while making a certain amount of sense from a bankrupt and a vulnerable nation, put a considerable strain on the Chimerica's relations with the United States, which still looked on the region as a sort of protectorate. The fragile peace that followed the downfall of Farsante was not destined to last. Exiled former members of the Farsante Guard, operating from base camps just outside the border, began to make terrorist attacks on isolated farms and towns. The president responded by building up the military to meet the threat, instituting an unpopular military draft. It soon became apparent that the United States itself was funding the rebels, though for a long time the government in Washington persisted in calling the war covert, low-intensity conflict. Faced with the threat of seeing the Chimerican government once again overthrown by North Americans, the Chimerican president declared a state of emergency. This included press censorship, prohibition of strikes and opposition rallies, and broad power to security forces. The strongest negative effect the measures had was on the image of the country abroad. The rebels, led by former Farsante Guard, Major Roberto Padilla, never succeeded in holding any Chimerican territory. Avoiding direct clashes with the Chimerican military, they put pressure on the government by attacking rural schools, health clinics, and cooperatives. The total of civilian casualties mounted. U.S. involvement reached a peak with the sinking of several ships by CIA saboteurs in the port city of Fonseca. Chimerica brought suit against the U.S. in the International Court of Justice. The court eventually found in favor of Chimerica, deciding that the USA had violated numerous international laws in this attack and in its funding of the anti-government rebels. In typical U.S. fashion, though, it refused to pay the damages levied by the court. Unhappy with Chimerica's economic and foreign policies, the United States eventually declared an embargo on all trade. Though the government had made some preparations for such a step by diversifying its trade relations, this measure of economic warfare dealt a devastating blow to the economy. The wage freeze and strike ban imposed as part of the state of emergency proved highly unpopular. Business leaders in normal times, the strongest opponents of the union activity, actually began encouraging strikes as a means of putting pressure on the government. The decision to call elections resulted in the first peaceful change of leaders in over half a century. Though the president's supporters charged that the National Liberation Party controlled the army unduly influenced the outcome, the election was won by the former guerrilla leader Manuel Calderón Iglesias. Presidente Calderón moved decisively, put Chimerica on a much more radical revolutionary course. Still, Presidente Olmec did his job, and for the most part I am satisfied in how that played out. I'm okay with not being reelected. You know, the opportunity arose to have the democratic elections. It was the first peaceful change of power in ever so long. And if that's what the people wanted, I don't think it was the army. I think it was the people. The National Liberation Party, they spoke so many things the people wanted, like price controls, and if Chimerica ended up being ruined, that doesn't fall on Presidente Olmec's shoulders. Towards the end, I tried to repeal that which was set in place by Captain Badass himself, but oh well. Successfully fought off 2 coups, and I suppose I successfully fought off the United States itself, huh? Imagine that. International Court of Justice ruling in favor of Chimerica. The United States just giving it the middle finger. What a surprise! Yeah. I thought that was enjoyable, and overall I'm satisfied by that playthrough. I felt like a sitting duck there towards the end anyway, so it's fine by me. Peaceful democratic change of power. That's what Calderon wanted to do, you know. He was the man who wanted to be in power all that time. More power to Captain Badass. But Presidente Olmec did not die. He did not become a martyr, and he did not resign and go into exile. He did a good job. as good of a job you can do in such a difficult situation. Man. Fuck. Steering that shit. Man, I would not want to be in his shoes. That takes care of hidden agenda, everyone. For everyone has a hidden agenda. I imagine not everyone manages to survive their first playthrough of the game and actually go through such an extended period of time as I did. That was a lengthy biography. Well, not a yeah, a lengthy encyclopedia entry. I'm pleased. Sorry it took so long to get this finished, but now it's done. We may all rejoice. I look forward to communicating with you all at a future time. You can leave the advice that I will never follow below in the comments. Figured I'd get that last antagonistic jab in. Perhaps someday in the far future, someone will watch this video and wonder, how the hell do you play this game effectively? And they'll read what you write in the comments and go, oh, but I might not play this game for another 15 years, who knows? Or maybe I'll play it on a broadcast sometime. Leave it up to the chuckle fucks to the side. You'll be my ministers. This is the greatest idea ever. No, it's not. Now, Kirk Olmec Fogg shall sail off into the sunset, wishing he had done better, but knowing that, given everything that had transpired, he'd say that history would not view him unkindly. But I suppose that depends on which newspaper you read.